All right, here we go. So, what's the domain? All real numbers. Except x can't be plus or minus 2. Okay, which means then are my vertical asymptotes, x equals 2 and x equals negative 2. All right, let's put those on there. Okay, like it so far? Degree of the top? Degree of the bottom? So that tells me that top is less than bottom, right? So that gives me a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Okay. Then I got to figure out what f of 0 is, right? So that's going to be 2 times 0 over 0 squared minus 4. So that's going to be 0 over negative 4, which is 0. So that gives me a y-intercept of the origin. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Even though it's on that asymptote, I can cross a horizontal asymptote, but I can't cross a vertical one. Okay? All right. So we're good there. For my x-intercept, I set the numerator, which was 2x. I set that equal to 0. So that gives me x equals 0. So my x-intercept is also the origin. Is it a double root? No, because this is just a singleton, right? 2x is a singleton, so it's not a double root, so it actually will physically cross at the origin. It won't kiss. Okay? All right? So, let me rewrite this in here. So, 2x over x squared minus 4. So, now I've got to come up with other points to go along with it. So let's go negative 3, negative 4, and negative 10. Negative 3, if I put that into my function, I get negative 6 over positive 5, which is negative 1.2. If I put in negative 4, I get negative 8 over 12, which is negative 2/3. If I put in negative 10, I get negative 20 over 96, which is a little bit more than negative 0.2. Actually, technically it's a little bit less. Okay? So that tells me then that my graph over here goes through like that. try -1 and +1. Okay. If I put in -1, I get -2 over -3, which is +2/3. If I put in +1, I get 2 over -3, which is -2/3. So that tells me that this portion of the function waves on through like that. Now I've got the last section, so I'm going to go 3, 4, and 10. If I put 3 into my function, I get 6 over 5, which is 1.2. If I put 4 into my function, I get 8 over 12, which is 2/3. And if I put 10 into my function, I get 20 over 96. So this side through like that. With me? Okay. So it looks like that, here, and there. Okay. I just put on the sideboard just the function so that we don't have to keep scrolling back up and down. Whoa, tap the brakes. So we don't have to keep scrolling back up and down for it. Okay. So the end behavior then would be as x approaches positive infinity, my function approaches 0 from above. As x approaches negative infinity, my function approaches 0, but from below.
I know that you said, like, when you look at the graph and do that, it's much easier, but how do you figure that out?
Positive infinity is way over here. Right? So I'm getting closer and closer and closer to 0 from above. Okay? Negative infinity is way out there. I'm getting closer and closer to 0, but from below. Okay? Now, some people on Friday's quiz put that as, they put this as like that. Okay? And that's bad, because that means two totally different things. Okay? Right? Especially if this were, if you'll notice, Vivian, that this number right there, okay, that number corresponds with the number from our horizontal asymptote. Okay? So if we had an actual number there, like 2, okay, so if I had 2 from above and 2 from below, that doesn't mean the same thing as positive 2 and negative 2. Those mean two totally different things. Okay? So we have to be sure of what we're talking about there. But those numbers come from the horizontal asymptote. Okay? With me? Then we've got asymptotal behavior. So as x approaches negative 2 from the left, what's my function doing? As x approaches negative 2 from the right, what's my function doing? And as x approaches positive 2 from the left, what's my function doing? And as x approaches positive 2 from the right, what's my function doing? Okay? So as I'm going to negative 2 from the left, my function is going down to negative infinity. Approaching 2 here from the left, my function is going down to negative infinity. As I approach negative 2, from the right, my function is going up to positive infinity. As I approach positive 2 from the left, my function is going down to negative infinity. And as I approach positive 2 from the right, my function is going up towards negative infinity. Let's scroll back down to those in a minute. Okay? Other questions on that? Try that one. Domain. All real numbers. Which means what for my vertical asymptotes? There is none. Okay. No number, no real number will make that denominator be 0. Okay. Degree of the top, 2. Degree of the bottom, 2. So that's the same case. So my horizontal asymptote is what? Y equals 2. Next I have to find f of 0. That's going to be 2 times 0 squared minus 10 all over 0 squared plus 5. That's going to be negative 10 over positive 5, which is negative 2. So that gives me a y-intercept of 0, negative 2.
So the y-intercept is when we put in all, and x is just the top.
Yep. The x-intercept is where we set the numerator equal to 0. The numerator was 2x squared minus 10. We set that equal to 0. So we get 2x squared equals positive 10. So we get x squared equals positive 5. So we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Okay? So that gives me 2 x-intercepts. One at the square root of 5, 0, and the other at negative square root of 5, 0. Now, I'm just estimating here. Okay? The square root of 5 is bigger than 2, because 5 is bigger than 4, and smaller than 3. Okay? It's closer to 2 than it is, so I think we can guesstimate it at about 2.2-ish. Okay? Did you actually figure it out?
It says 2.24.
2.24. Okay. Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. So we can put those two on there. 2.2, negative 2.2. Okay. I only have one zone. I already have 3 spots in it. So let's go on the outside. So let's go positive 10. If I put positive 10 into my function, I get 200 minus 10, which is 190 on the top. And I get 100 plus 5, which is 105 on the bottom. 190 divided by 105 is something like 1.8, I want to say. Bigger than 1, smaller than 2. If I put in negative 10, I also get 190 over 105. That's me right there. No, there is no negative on it. Yeah. Yeah. So that gives me a graph. Oops. That gives me a graph that looks like that. I have no asymptotal behavior for this problem because I have no vertical asymptotes. So I just have end behavior as x is approaching positive infinity. My function is approaching 2 from below. And as x is approaching negative infinity, my function is approaching 2 from below.
So why don't you have any asymptotal
I don't have any vertical asymptotes.
also for
It's always only ever been vertical asymptotes. Okay. Remember, you have a formative this week, Wednesday. Goldenrod homework packet due Friday. Quiz on Friday.